You've warned that Democrats will lose in 2020 if they embrace socialism, as you put it. You were booed at the California Democratic Convention when you said that. Only one candidate on this stage, Senator Sanders, identifies himself as a democratic socialist. What are the policies or positions of your opponents that you think are veering towards socialism?
Well, I think that the bottom line is if we don't clearly define that we are not socialists, the Republicans are going to come at us every way they can and call us socialists. And if you look at the Green New Deal, which I admire the sense of urgency and how important it is to do climate change. I'm a scientist, but we can't promise every American a government job. If you want to get universal health care coverage, I believe that health care is a right and not a privilege. But you can't expect to eliminate private insurance for 180 million people, many of whom don't want to give it up. In Colorado, we brought businesses and nonprofits together. We got to near universal health care coverage. We were the first state in America to bring the environmental community and the oil and gas industry to aggressively address methane emissions. And we were also the first place to expand reproductive rights on a scale basis, and we reduced teen pregnancy by 54%. We've done the big progressive things that people said couldn't be done. I've done what pretty much everyone else up here is still talking about doing.
Governor Hickenlooper, day one, if you are day one at the White House, how do you respond?
With these children?
Let me get to you in just a second.
I'm sorry.
Governor, day one, thousands of men, women, and children cross the border asking for asylum for a better life. What do you do? Day one, hour one.
Well, certainly the images we've seen this week just compound the emotional impact that the world is judging us by. If you'd ever told me any time in my life that this country would sanction federal agents to take children from the arms of their parents, put them in cages, actually put them up for adoption, in Colorado we call that kidnapping, I would have told you it was unbelievable. And the first thing we have to do is recognize the humanitarian crisis on the border for what it is. We make sure that there are the sufficient facilities in place so that women and children are not separated from their families, the children are with their families. We have to make sure that ICE is completely reformed and they begin looking at their job in a humanitarian way where they're addressing the whole needs of the people that they are engaged with along the border. And we'd have to make sure ultimately that we provide not just shelter, but food, clothing, and access to medical care.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If I could ask one question, just because I think...
Governor, I'll give you 30 seconds.
I think that the question they're asking in South Bend, I think in cities across the country, is why has it taken so long? We had a shooting when I first became mayor 10 years before Ferguson, and the community came together and we created an Office of the Independent Monitor, a Civilian Oversight Commission. We diversified the police force in 2 years. We actually did de-escalation training. I think the real question that America should be asking is why 5 years after Ferguson, every city doesn't have this level of police accountability.
I want to bring Governor Hickenlooper into this for a moment. Governor, you have said that oil and gas companies should be a part of the solution on climate change. Lots of your colleagues on stage tonight have talked about moving away from fossil fuels entirely. Can oil and gas companies be real partners in this fight?
Well, I share the sense of urgency. I'm a scientist, so I recognize that we're within 10 or 12 years of actually, suffering irreversible damage. But guaranteeing everybody a government job is not going to get us there. So, socialism, in that sense, is not the solution. We have to look at what really will make a difference. In Colorado, we're closing a couple of coal plants, replacing them with wind, solar, and batteries, and the monthly bills go down. We're building a network for electric vehicles. We are working with the oil and gas industry, and we created the first methane regulations in the country. Methane is 25 times worse than CO2. And then we've got to get to that last part. I mean, the industrial, heavy industry, we haven't seen the plans yet. If you look at the real problem, CO2, the worst polluters in CO2 is China, is the United States, and then it's concrete and its exhalation. And beyond that, I think we've got to recognize that only by bringing people together, businesses, nonprofits, and we can't demonize every business. We've got to bring them together to be part of this thing, because ultimately,
Governor,
if we're not able to do that, we will be doomed to failure. We have no way of doing this without bringing everyone together.
Thank you.
I'm going to go down the line here, and I'm asking you, please, for 1 or 2 words only. All right? Please.
Really?
President Obama in his first year wanted to address both health care and climate. And he could only get one signature issue accomplished. It was, obviously, health care. He didn't get to do climate change. You may only get one shot, and your first issue that you're going to push, you get one shot that it may be the only thing you get passed. What is that first issue for your presidency, Governor Hickenlooper?
I would do a collaborative approach to climate change, and I would pronounce it well before the election to make sure we don't re-elect the worst president in American history.
And this is what this question is, which is you're likely going to have to reset a relationship between America and another country or entity if you become president perhaps because of some relationship that you just mentioned about President Trump. What is the first relationship you like to reset as president?
You know, I talk about constant engagement, and I think the first country I would go to, but I understand they've been cheating and stealing intellectual property, would be China, because if we're going to deal with public health pandemics, if we're going to deal with all the challenges of the globe, we've got to have relationships with everyone.
Mr. Yang. Governor Hickenlooper.
I'm a small business owner who brought that same scrappy spirit to make Colorado one of the most progressive states in America. We expanded reproductive health to reduce teenage abortion by 64%. We were the first state to legalize marijuana, and we transformed our justice system in the process. We passed universal background checks in a purple state. We got to near universal health care coverage. We attacked climate change with the toughest methane regulations in the country, and for the last 3 years, we've been the #1 economy in America. You don't need big government to do big things. I know that because I'm the one person up here who's actually done the big progressive things everyone else is talking about. If we turn towards socialism, we run the risk of helping to re-elect the worst president in American history.